Hey everyone, hola a todos, bienvenidos, bienvenidas. Es martes, it's Tuesday again, and here I'm with my friend and colleague David. I'm broadcasting from Berlin. Hola desde Berlin. I'm always very excited to be here because I don't know, we prepared a session for today. We are always very happy to see you all here. Many people coming every Tuesday to watch our episodes. And yeah, welcome everyone. We are very happy to have you here. And I'm here with David. Hi, David. How are you?
Hi, David. I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. Estoy bien. Estoy un poco ocupado porque estoy preparándome para mis vacaciones que comienzan mañana. So I'm preparing for my little vacation, a road trip that I'm taking starting tomorrow. So I'm glad I get to be here with you all today before I go, and I'll be back next week, of course. But yo he estado planeando estas vacaciones por pocas semanas. Mi amigo me preguntó hace 2 semanas si yo quería ir con él a Carolina del Norte. So my friend asked me 2 weeks ago if I'd like to go to North Carolina with him. So I said yes. Very excited for that. And that is kind of what I have going on in my life. David, ¿cómo estás tú? ¿Cómo está Berlín?
Bueno, Berlín está bien, un poco oscura. Todos pueden ver en la ventana. El otoño está cerca. Autumn is nearby here. It's getting cold. I'm super happy about that because I come from Bogota, Colombia, and this is like Bogota weather. So I'm always very happy when we are done with the hot days. No estoy acostumbrado al calor aún, después de 7 años, porque desde hace 7 años vivo en Berlín, desde 2013, y vale, 7 años aquí en Alemania. It's been 7 years for me living here in Germany, and I always find it very difficult to be here in the summer during these hot days. But here we are. I'm very happy for you, David, because you're taking some days off, well deserved. And I hope you too, everyone, should have also vacation soon. And I think since we are here today busy with some Spanish, un poco más de español, before we get started with the topic that we prepared for you today, we should maybe review some of the topics that we saw in the last 2 episodes, in the last 2 times that we were here. If you remember, we learned a little bit more about stress marks and how to stress words in Spanish, and we'd like to play a little game with you, which is let's review some few words. I would like to add this word here, and I'd like you to tell us whether this is the right spelling or not. Yeah, and let's start with a word that is very similar to its counterpart in English, which is papel, paper. And listen very carefully, pay attention to how I pronounce this word, papel. Yeah, papel. So it's a word that contains, it's made of 2 syllables, papel, and, Alejo is from Colombia. Yeah. So it's paper, and here we have papel. So what would you say? Is that correct? Yes, Marie, this is paper. Is that correct? Is it correct the way we spell this word here on the screen? Papel. So while you try to figure that out, I will also prepare the next one, the next word. Let me put it here. Um, I think since this is a topic that we learned some weeks ago, we can see some answers. Yes, see, that's correct. Papel. I like to see this, David, because this is a very difficult topic even for Spanish native speakers. And if we get used to see these words, if we remember the rules that we explained in the past few weeks, we realize that that's not that difficult. So everyone is right. I'm very happy to see that. This is correct because here we have a word that ends in L and the stress is on the last syllable. So this is a regular word. This follows the rules, and we don't need any stress mark here on the E, papel. That's correct. Yeah, cool. Let's use this next word to check on that. This is the Spanish word for couch. And here I would say in Spanish, sofá, el sofá.
This one is a little confusing because in English we say sofa, of course, but the stress falls on the second syllable instead in Spanish, so you hear sofá. So if you remember the rules that we talked about, there's a certain group of words that ends in, well, for words that ends in vowels, we put the stress in a certain place unless there is some way that we're breaking the rule. So I'm curious to see. It looks like we're getting a lot of good answers.
Yes.
And that's great. It looks like people are learning how to type accent marks too on the letters, which is great, because I know that can be sort of a point of frustration too, to not be able to type those. But this is looking great. So we know that according to the rules we've learned before, if a word ends in a vowel, then the stress will naturally fall on the second to last syllable without an accent mark to tell us otherwise. So if we don't have an accent mark, this word should be pronounced sofa, but we know that we pronounce it sofa. So it actually breaks the rules. And we know we need to put an accent mark over the A to kind of draw the stress to that second syllable instead.
Yeah.
So great work, everyone.
Yeah, that's correct. So if we spell this word in Spanish like this, it would be pronounced like sofa, like the English word. But in Spanish, we stress the last syllable. So that's why we need an accent there, because we are breaking a rule, the rule that David just explained. So well done, Jeremy, and everyone. It's great to see these right answers. And we should maybe play with the last word before we go on with the topic for today, which is unidad. So unidad. This is a word that we use with the article la. It's a feminine word, la unidad. Just a quick remark before we talk about unidad. Sofá, with an accent mark, that's a masculine word in Spanish, el sofá. Even though it ends in a, so don't forget that, el sofá. So let's go back to unidad. It's unit, yeah, that's correct. And in Spanish, we stress the last syllable here, unidad, la unidad. So do we need a stress mark there?
I remember this is an example that I mentioned specifically last week. Not this word exactly, but words that end in this specific suffix, dad. So we can think of words like electricidad for electricity, or la ciudad, the city. And it looks like people are getting the right answer, which is very encouraging. So yes, that's right. For all the people who say that we don't need a stress mark, like Jack here, that's correct. So we know that for words ending in a consonant that is not the letter N or S, so that would include the word unidad, the stress falls on the last syllable. So that's the same with a word like papel, which is the first word that we just saw. And we know that because we pronounce the word unidad, we can hear, yes, okay, the stress is falling on that last syllable, which means we don't need an accent mark. We'll just follow the rule as it's given. So that's the same thing you hear in words like the ones I just mentioned, electricidad or ciudad, nacionalidad, nationality. We know that for most words, I'd say I can't think of a single example where a word ends in the suffix dad, D-A-D, and it doesn't have the stress fall on the last syllable. But if it did end in that suffix and it didn't have the stress fall on the last syllable, you would need an accent mark on one of the previous syllables. And so this is also, when you see this suffix, keep in mind that this is one of the most common, easily recognizable feminine word endings that you can find. So if you see a word like unidad, electricidad, and it ends in DAD, it's a pretty safe bet that that word is a feminine noun. So la unidad, la ciudad, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's correct. And David, regarding your question, I cannot remember any word ending in that whose syllable is stressed in a different position. So it's always that. Unidad, electricidad, universidad, propiedad.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good clue for the future. But I think we have enough of stress marks, and I think we can continue with a new topic. And I would like to point out this question, which is very common when learning Spanish. What's the difference between desde hace, and hace, and how we can use them? So these are prepositions. Don't forget that a preposition is a word that always needs another word in order to have its functionality. So in Spanish, it's almost a rule that a preposition it's always followed by another word, by a noun, like I don't know, computer, or by a person, by an object. So this is a preposition. We'll learn more about prepositions in the future episodes. We are also planning to talk a little bit about local prepositions and so on, and how we can also add some local indications in Spanish. But now I think we will start with these prepositions, which are temporal prepositions, describe time. So if you remember well, David said in the beginning that a friend asked him 2 weeks ago if he would like to come over to North Carolina. So that happened 2 weeks ago. So David, maybe we should start with hace, with the last one. So when do we use hace in Spanish?
So we'll see that when we use hace, we're talking about a certain period of time ago. So we're referring to something that happened in the past that is completed and finished. It's not continuing into the present. So we'll see in the upcoming examples that we choose a period of time, however long it is. Maybe it's 1 day ago, maybe it's 30 years ago, but we use this word hace right before we say this period of time, and that indicates something happened X amount of time ago. So there's a really great example here on the screen. We say, hace 10 años vine a Europa por primera vez. And that translates to 10 years ago. So we say hace 10 años. We know that 10 años is 10 years. Hace means ago in this context, and it comes before we say 10 years. So that's a little different from English. We say hace 10 años vine. So that is the past, one of the past tenses in Spanish of the verb venir, to come. So 10 years ago, I came to Europe, a Europa por primera vez, for the first time. So keep in mind, we're describing an event that happened in the past, which is the first time that I came to Europe. and we want to know when that happened. Well, the answer is 10 years ago. So we use this word hace, and you might notice that hace is a present tense form of the verb hacer, to do or to make. And I was trying to talk with David earlier about why this might be, or what sort of connection you might be able to make with the actual verb hacer. It might be confusing for you to think of them as the same word, so maybe it's better if you just kind of remember these specific examples, like hace is used with a period of time, and completely separately it's used as a verb that means to do or to make. But I can also talk about a little connection that I tried to make in my mind, which is that if you say hace, that kind of translates to it makes. You find this in expressions and sentences like hace buen tiempo. We would say it is good weather, there is good weather, but you could also say, yeah, so Mary said hace calor, which literally translates to it makes heat. So if you think of hace 10 años, vine a Europa por primera vez, you're kind of saying literally it makes 10 years I came to Europe. And so that doesn't really make sense to an English speaker, but there are some times where you might say it makes 10 years since I've done X, Y, or Z thing, or it marks 10 years since blah, blah, blah. If that's helpful for you, let it be helpful. If it's not, just completely disregard what I'm saying. But I'm trying to make a connection. If you're wondering, oh, why does this little word hace come into play when we're talking about time in this way, that's something that was helpful for me to remember. Okay, David, I just talked for a long time. What do you have to say about hace 10 años or hace una semana?
So don't get confused by the verb hace there, because it's just here used as a time indicator to express this period of time that passed. And that happened in the past. 10 years ago, I came to Europe for the first time. And it's always important to remember that hace stands in front of the time frame that we are using here. And this also comes with practice. So let's have a look at another example, which comes in the form of a question. ¿Hace cuánto tiempo compraste tu coche? How much time ago did you buy your car? In this case, we are using the word hace in a question because we want to know how long it's been since you bought your car. And look at this. Tiempo is surrounded by brackets. In this case, we understand that the context is related to time, and that's why it's optional to add tiempo in this question. So we could ask, ¿hace cuánto compraste tu coche? Or we can, ¿hace cuánto tiempo compraste tu coche? That's also what we can ask. And again, cuánto is the question word that we are using here to replace or to ask for a period of time. That's why we are not having here days or months or years or hours, but cuánto, because we want to know, okay, it was 10 years ago, it was 5 years ago, that's the answer. Fue hace 5 años, hace 10 años compré mi coche nuevo. And maybe we can also have a look at another example with a different period of time, which is days. So we brought this question. Mis padres me compraron un laptop hace 5 días. My parents bought me a laptop 5 days ago. So again, here we see that regardless the position of hace 5 días, it is just indicating when something happened in the past. And this is a closed action in the past. This doesn't have any connection to the present. It's something that happened in the past. And that's why when we use hace plus time, period of time, the verbs are in the past, indefinido form, which is the past simple in Spanish. So this is a good opportunity for us to maybe come up with a sentence, something that happened, I don't know, when did you get married? When, I don't know, when did you start school? Something like that, something that we can also say in Spanish to practice this word with a period of time. Hace 7 años me mudé a Berlín. 7 years ago, I moved to Berlin. That's what I said also in the beginning in our conversation. Cool. So this is Hace. So here we are talking about a period of time that passed related to something to an action that took place some time ago. But there are certain actions that started in the past and have a strong connection to the present. And that's where we use other words, the keyword desde. And maybe we can start, David, with desde hace, because it's a little bit complicated since we are mixing up here two different words, desde and hace. So we just learned hace. What happens when we put this together with desde? What does desde hace mean?
So we're getting a little bit more complicated with desde hace. We're still referring to a finite period of time. So that could be 10 years, that could be 1 week, but we're now saying since this period of time ago. So because we have the word since, we're talking about an action that started in the past and is now continuing into the present when we're talking. So desde hace is a little different from hace because hace is cut and dried. We're saying this action happened X amount of time ago, it finished, we are no longer doing that action. Desde hace is saying this action started X amount of time ago, and since that point, we are continuing to do that action. So I think it's probably modeled best in an example like this one, where we say, desde hace una semana hago deporte todos los días, which translates to, since a week ago, I've played sports every day. So we see that phrase desde hace to start the sentence, and then it's followed immediately by a finite period of time, a fixed period of time, here una semana, 1 week. So since 1 week ago, then you say in the present tense an action that is continuing and you're assuming started a week ago, which is playing sports, hacer deporte. So in this case, present tense of hacer in the first person, I play or I do sports, hago deporte todos los días. So we're saying I started playing a week ago, but I'm continuing to play, and ever since a week ago, I've been playing. So you can think of desde hace as since X time ago, but you have to specify how much time it actually is.
Yeah. So maybe we can also look at another sentence that we have here on the screen. No vamos a España desde hace muchos años. We haven't gone to Spain since many years ago. So in this case, we are also referring to an action that hasn't taken place during so many years. So that's why we are connecting kind of the past with the present, just also even to indicate that we haven't gone to Spain for this time. So desde hace, it's the key for us is it's the tool to talk about something that started in the past and it's something that is still continuing in the present. And we are talking here about a period of time also as it happened to be with hace in the beginning. The only difference is that hace is referring to an action that started in the past and finished in the past, and desde hace is an expression, a preposition that we use actually to refer to something that is that goes beyond the past and is still running in the present. So this is important to keep in mind. This is a period of time because when we are talking about fixed points in time, there is a little change in this structure. So if we say, for example, since no, let's start with this. So we are talking here about fixed points in time. So it's an action that started in the past and it's continuing into the present. So this is easier to understand if we have a look at a sentence. So I can say vivo en Berlín desde 2013, or David can also say vivo en Nueva York desde 2018. So in this case, we are saying David moved to New York in 2018, and since then he's been living there in New York. So in this case, we are talking about a specific point in time, 2018, 2013. It can be also a day. It can be Friday. It can be a month. It can be April. It's a specific time. We can place it. We cannot count it. We cannot. We are not saying 5 years, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So it's very, very important to keep this in mind, because if we are not talking about periods of time, then we will need this thing. David, we have another example. Maybe you can talk a little bit about it, because here we are.
So we say, desde el viernes no nos hablamos. And we see this word desde, which we know now must come before a fixed point in time. So we're going to say el viernes. We're going to be referring to Friday. I guess we're talking about last Friday. Notice we're not saying 3 days ago or 4 days ago, but we're saying, we're choosing a specific point in the past, desde el viernes, since Friday. And then we say a verb in the present tense. This can be a little bit confusing because in English, you'd want to say something like, we have spoken, we have not spoken, we have done this, we haven't done that. But that's a more compound tense that actually isn't even necessary in Spanish. You just stick with the simple present tense. So we say, no nos hablamos, we don't speak to each other. And you'll see this from many episodes ago, but that pronoun nos, reflexive pronoun, refers back to the subject. So in this case, we speaking to ourselves is the Spanish way of saying we speak to each other, one to the other. So all of this to say, no nos hablamos in the present tense means we don't speak to each other. But if you want to kind of translate that into what would sound more grammatical to an English speaker, we would say we haven't spoken to each other since Friday. So a lot to unpack there, but the main point to take away is when we use the word desde, since, we choose a fixed point in the past. We're not talking about, like David said, we're not counting the days since something happened. We're saying, since this one exact point, I'm going to tell you in the past, not 3 days ago, not 4 days ago, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yep. That's great, David. So I see here Mary trying to formulate a sentence with desde hace. Desde hace tiempo vivo en Nueva York, o yo he estado viviendo, I've been living, yo he estado viviendo en Nueva York. And here we don't need por muchos años, because you are implying that in when you say desde hace tiempo. So it's okay. Or desde hace mucho tiempo, you can also say that. Or desde hace muchos años. Because here we are talking about a period of time. We can count those many years. And that's why we need desde hace. So well done, Mary. You can also try to build your own sentence with something that happened to you, that you have been doing for a while, for some days, months. So I have an example, for example. So we can say, we started this project back in April. Desde abril trabajamos juntos en este proyecto, David y yo, for example. So since April, we've been working on this project together. So I hope this is clear. Now you can also let us know if you have any question. Please add it in the comment field, because we would be super happy to answer them.
This is a kind of confusing topic, I will say. just because when I first started learning hace 2 años, hace 3 semanas, when we're talking about ago, some amount of time ago, I would just kept getting confused, like, okay, why is this verb hacer that I've known from a completely different context, which means to do or to make, or even in expressions like hace buen tiempo, it's good weather. Why is it coming back in this form? I had to kind of stop trying to piece it apart grammatically and just accept it for what it is. It's not like, it's just a part of a specific phrase that you'll get used to as you use it more. Hace 10 años, 10 years ago. Hace una semana, 1 week ago. And as you use it more, it'll stop confusing you as much to see this word hace, and you'll just say, okay, this means some time ago, and you'll get practice with it as well. So don't let it be more difficult than it needs to be. Yes, it's the same word as you see in expressions like hace mal tiempo, hace calor, or even used as the verb to do or to make, but that is just a completely separate set of use cases than you would use here. So try to separate them in your mind if you can, and do that by practicing saying something that you can apply to your own life, like David said, something that you did 2 weeks ago. You could say, hace 2 semanas yo escribí una carta a mi madre. I wrote a letter to my mother. And keep in mind, you're using the past tense here, which we haven't really talked about in these episodes, but something we will address soon, because that's important to be able to use that with the expression hace una cantidad de tiempo, some quantity of time.
Yeah.
So Susan, yeah, I saw Susan's question earlier. She asked a good question, and she's following up on it. She says, I'm still confused about the use of hace in today's weather. So yeah, this kind of touches on my point. Try to keep hace, when it refers to time, hace 2 semanas or hace 3 años, separate from this idea of hace when you're talking about weather. Hace buen tiempo, hace calor, hace frío, it's cold. When you're talking about today's weather, it is very much in the present. You know, you're saying right now it's cold. Right now there's good weather, which makes sense because hace is in the present tense form of hacer. And so is hace when we're talking about 2 years ago, 5 days ago, whatever. So it is confusing. But in that case, when we're talking about 5 years ago or a week ago or 2 days ago, the verbs that we use around that expression are in the past tense. So that is what I think is probably the most confusing to new learners, is the fact that in one case, when you're talking about the weather or some environmental condition, hace calor, it's all present tense. But when we're talking about something that happened some time ago, we must use the past tense, even though this expression, hace 2 semanas, 2 weeks ago, is technically in the present tense.
Yeah.
I think I'm making it more confusing than it needs to be.
No,
But
I think, David, we have here 2 excellent examples given by our lovely people. Alicia says, hace mal tiempo, it's bad weather. Here we are using the verb hacer, which means to make, to do. So in this case, it would be literally, it makes bad weather. So in Spanish, when we are talking about the weather, we drop the subject because there is no subject. So in Spanish, we have this easy solution. So in this case, we are referring directly to the verb hacer. It makes bad weather. And I like this sentence that Mary posted here. Hace 2 años que no se puede ver. So it's been 2 years since, or 2 years past since this is not visible anymore. Que no se puede ver. So you can't see that anymore. And in this case, we are also using the verb hace, just as we introduced this some minutes ago. When you use the verb, the word hace, it means ago. So in this case, when we are talking about time specific, not weather, not anything else, but time, we are indicating that a period of time passed since we did something. So 2 years ago, this is the meaning of this sentence. 2 years ago, this changed. And this is also related to another question posted here by Phyllis. Yeah, this is my question. Is que needed in this case? No, because when we use hace or desde hace, we are just indicating directly, we are referring to the time. We can talk about periods of time, or we can also talk about fixed points in time. So in this case, the K is not, the word K is not needed. These are very specific structures that are not very common in Spanish. There is a phenomena, there is something called queísmo, which is the, let's say, misuse of the word que in places where this word shouldn't be part of it. This is something that happens when more than 400 million people speak a language. So these cases can just arise where we use the language in a bad way, or when we break some rules. In this case, in this sample posted by Mari, hace 2 años que no se puede ver. Here we have a slightly different structure that can be replaced with hace 2 años no se puede ver, no podíamos ver. I would say desde hace 2 años no se puede ver in that case, because this is something reflecting on the present, something that started in the past. So I would just say desde hace 2 años no se puede ver. But in this case, we are seeing a different structure that says it's been 2 years since, it's not, something you can see. So language can be a bit more, let's say, it can be easier when we learn the language. When we are learning this target language, in our case Spanish, we tend to come up with very confusing structures because we see them being used by other speakers. And I would invite you to maybe get to the simple thing before making it more complicated. So we can learn the use of hace, desde hace, and desde that we explained today. And we will see also more examples in the future where these words are widely used with time frames, with points of time. And there might be the case where we see this que used or misused in one of those sentences. Don't get scary, because if you understand the basic rule, it's perfect. And if you use que or not in such a sentence, we would understand also Spanish as Spanish speakers.
So Dana asks a great question. She says, for desde el viernes no nos hablamos, which we learned earlier means we haven't spoken since Friday, spoken to each other. Can you also say no nos hablamos desde el viernes? If so, is the meaning the same, and does one sound more natural than the other? So here, exact same meaning, and you're free to move around this phrase wherever you want in the sentence. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, David, but those sound to me exactly the same. And it's kind of like, this is a little, if you want to get down into the grammatical weeds about it, the phrase desde el viernes, I believe, is like an adverb phrase, which modifies the verb hablar, to speak. And it's not even an essential part of the sentence, because the sentence can, if you have a verb in the sentence, that's the most fundamental part. And this adverb phrase that describes or modifies the verb can actually kind of go anywhere as long as it's not interfering with the verb phrase itself. So you wouldn't want to put, so the verb phrase would include no nos hablamos, because that kind of captures like the verb and all of its objects. But then you're free to move this other phrase, desde el viernes, around that verb phrase. So you wouldn't want to put it in the middle of, you couldn't say no nos desde el viernes hablamos, because then you're breaking up the verb phrase. But if you keep this verb phrase no nos hablamos together as one unit, then you can move this kind of time modifier desde el viernes on either side of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's correct. So there is no difference between desde el viernes no nos hablamos and no nos hablamos desde el viernes. When we talk in grammar terms, we can say that everything what we place in the first position, that's the most important thing. So maybe the only thing that would be worth saying here is that if we say desde el viernes, if we put it in the first part of the sentence, we are stressing that part. It's very important. Yeah, since Friday, that has been happening. So, but no difference in the meaning, not at all.
Wonderful. Yeah, Lisa, that was a good question. I agree, that was a good question. So many great questions today, and always, from our lovely viewers. You all are very engaged, and I can tell that you pay attention, which is very encouraging.
Steve is saying, yeah, yendo equals ing in English. Yes, Steve, we had a couple of weeks ago, hace algunos meses, vimos este tema. Some months ago, I think we learned this more a bit about gerund in Spanish, the endings ando, yendo. And you should have a look at this video. I think it was in May, and you find it on Facebook.
Okay, David, should we do some test sentences?
Yes.
And then
so yeah, that would be nice. So for everyone to practice this, I like this. If you forget the exact point of time that something happened, you can use desde hace, because this is a period of time. So that's a good way to remember this rule.
Right. If you can't remember that something happened in 2012 or 2013, you could say desde hace unos años. Like it lets you be more flexible and say, oh, a couple of years ago, instead of saying exactly when it happened. So that's a great example. I like that.
Yeah, that's correct. So let's start with our questions. So are you ready? Because we have here the first one, which is nos vemos todos los martes, abril. And here we have two options, A, desde, or B, hace. What would be correct here, everyone? You can type A or B. And we'd like to see what you think.
So when you're answering this question, think to yourself, are we talking about a fixed point in the past that we can point to and say, this is when this happened? Or are we saying we're talking about an amount of time that something has been happening for, or an amount of time that something happened in the past? And that'll help you inform your answer.
I see lots of right answers. That's great. Yeah, it's A. Nos vemos todos los martes desde abril. Desde abril. This is something that we've been doing for a couple of months, and you are here, lovely people. So we've been seeing each other for some months. This is also another structure that we use a lot in English to express the same in Spanish with desde hace or desde. I've been doing this for a period of time. So in that case, we would say desde hace or desde, depending on the time that we're using. If it's a fixed point, then let's use desde. Desde abril, nos vemos todos los martes. It's April, abril. Or we can also say in Spanish, desde hace 4 meses, nos vemos todos los martes. So these are the right solutions in this case, but here we have A, desde, or B, hace. And that was a good one. So let's go on to the next sentence. Fui a Panamá algunos años. What's the right answer? Fui a Panamá algunos años. A, desde hace, or B, hace? What do you think?
And so if you haven't seen this word fui before, it is a very irregular past tense form. Well, it is a past tense form of a very irregular verb, ir, to go, and it means I went. So fui is one of the past tense forms of to go, and it's conjugated in the first person. So yo fui, I went to Panama. Algunos años would mean some amount of years. We're not specifying exactly how many, but we are saying that it is an amount of time, maybe not an exact amount of time, of course. We're just saying some years, but we're not pointing to a specific time in the past and saying 2013 or 2008 or last month, something like that. So the answer looks like almost everyone has gotten this right, which is wonderful.
Yep.
So the answer would be B. So we know that hace means ago in this context when it comes before an amount of time. So hace algunos años means some amount of years ago. So we're saying I went to Panama hace algunos años.
I went to Panama some years ago. That's great, excellent. And we don't want to lose our tradition, and this is homework for next Tuesday. So we leave you here with this sentence. ¿Cuánto tiempo aprendes español? We are very interested in knowing this answer because regardless of the time, it's always very useful to practice a language, and we are all learning here together. So let us know the answer to this question, also with the right answer here, A, B, or C. This time you have the 3 words that we learned today, and we'll be very happy to see your answers next Tuesday, next time, next channel, and hopefully, all healthy.
So we will be back next week with what I think is a good topic. And if you have more suggestions for future topics beyond here, we have a lot of ideas as always. Every time we present a topic, I always think of 5 new things we could talk about. So we are keeping a list, and we're also keeping a list of your suggestions too. We have a Google form, which we will drop the link to in the comments here, so you can submit your ideas for what you'd like to see us talk about. And then feel free to comment on this video as well. Also, keep in touch with us on social media. So our handles for Twitter and Facebook, where you are right now, and TikTok and Instagram are at BabbleUSA. So reach out to us there. We love to share content, answer questions, and then you can also find us on our Quora space called Everything Language. 90,000 followers and growing fast. So there are lots of people who are asking wonderful questions about Spanish and all sorts of languages. And then we also have a lot of content on our digital magazine called Babble Magazine as well. And that is a great place to learn about Spanish if you want to know more, or even start learning about other languages that Babble offers too. So we'll put the links below. In the meantime, just hold out until next week when we'll be back at the same time, 1 p.m. Eastern, Tuesday, so September 8th, I believe.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Keep coming back. Tell your friends. Bring your friends. We love to see new faces and old faces. This is always so much fun. So I'll pass it off to you, David, to say any parting words.
Thank you very much for your time, for your attention. I'm always enjoying this. We are loving this, and I'm very looking forward to seeing you all next Tuesday. As David said, 1 p.m. Eastern time. I'm very confused because it's almost 8 p.m. here in Germany. So
you need to go to sleep and get some rest and stop working.
I need to go to sleep. No, but I cannot stop doing this. I'm enjoying this. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much. And yeah, I hope to see you soon next Tuesday. And enjoy your vacation, David.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'll have stories to share when I get back.
Yeah.
Goodbye, everyone. Adios a todos.
Adios.